Joining us today again is Peter Jaworski. Peter is an assistant teaching professor teaching business ethics at Georgetown University in the business school. He's a senior fellow with the Canadian Constitution Foundation and a director of the Institute for Liberal Studies. He's also been a visiting research professor at Brown University. Prior to joining the faculty at Georgetown, Peter was a visitor in the philosophy department at the College of Worcester and was an instructor in philosophy at Bowling Green State University. Peter's academic work has been published or is forthcoming in several journals, including Ethics, the Canadian Journal of Law and Jurisprudence, the Journal of Business Ethics, and Ethical Theory and Moral Practice. Along with Jason Brennan, Peter is the author of Markets Without Limits, Moral Virtues and Commercial Interests, which was published in 2015. Please join me in welcoming Peter Jaworski.
And I'm Canadian too. I think that should go on the list of accomplishments there. It's like Peter is a Canadian. He wasn't born in Canada, but he eventually made it there from Poland, became a Canadian. That's a good accomplishment. This is my first time in New Orleans, by the way, and it's pretty incredible. So I'm really grateful to you for being here. I'm grateful to Chris for bringing me up here. I get to visit New Orleans. I'm here through Sunday, so it's my first time around. Okay, there's an almost limitless market for books about the moral limits of markets. Just in the last couple of years, people like Michael Walzer, who's a political theorist, philosopher Elizabeth Anderson and Deborah Satz, Michael Sandle, who's a political theorist, not a philosopher, and Margaret Jane Radden, they've released these books that essentially argue that there are some things that it is permissible for you to give away for free, to have, use, or exchange for free, but not for money, right? So their thesis, in short, is this. It's the anti-commodification thesis, and I've just said what it is, right? So there are some things that it's perfectly morally okay for you to give away, to have, to use, or to exchange with somebody else, as long as you do it for free. As soon as you introduce money or markets, then suddenly what was otherwise a morally good thing to do becomes immoral. Now, from the examples that I gave earlier, consider kidneys, right? We are encouraged to donate our kidneys. People think it's a good thing for us to give away one of our kidneys. If you do something like that, people will applaud you. They will think you a morally amazing person. But if you wanted to sell your kidney, at least some people, including the anti-commodification theorists, they respond by saying, no, you shouldn't be allowed to do that. So they defend an asymmetry, right? G is permissible, but G plus money is not, right? That's the asymmetry. Now it turns out, as I've discovered, that there is a limited market for books about markets without limits, right? Jason Brennan and myself, we co-authored this book. It was released about 3 or 4 months ago now. Sales are okay. Could be better. Buy my book, by the way. There's nothing wrong with buying and selling books, by the way. Put me on your syllabus, Chris. We defend that way you'll be forced to buy my book. The markets without limits thesis is the following. It's a symmetrical thesis. According to us, oh, you know, I say that tongue-in-cheek and as a joke. I'm not very good at things like that. I guess maybe I should have come with copies of my book, but I didn't. The thesis is this: anything that is permissible to have, use, and or exchange for free is also permissible to have, use, and or exchange for money. There's no asymmetry. That's the claim of the book. None whatsoever. If it's morally okay for free, then it's morally okay for money, right? It's a perfect symmetry. There are at least 2 different kinds of objections to markets. The first are a set of in-principle objections. And in my talk today, I'm only going to cover this category of objections. The in-principle objections tell us that there's something about markets as such that make them incompatible with certain goods or certain services, like kidneys, for example, or sex, for example. There are also in practice objections, and here the claim is that there are certain empirical facts that make markets the wrong allocative tool for the good or service in question. Now, as I've said, I'm only going to cover the in-principle ones, but during question and answer session, I'm happy to field whatever in-practice objections you might have to markets, right? And here's an overview of what I'll do today. First, I'm going to motivate the subject by explaining to you why this debate matters, why it's not merely an academic philosophical discussion, why it has real practical consequences, and why it matters a great deal, in fact. Then I'll go through 3 objections to markets and things like kidneys: the mere commodity objection, the wrong signal objection, and then, if there's time, the wrong currency objection at the end, right? Why does this debate matter? Well, look, every 10 minutes, a new person enters the waiting list for kidneys. Every 10 minutes in the United States of America, there's a person whose kidneys have failed and who is now on a waiting list hoping to get a kidney from one of you healthy people, right? Now, here's the number of people who have entered the waiting list since about 1990, and I have it up to 2014. These are the registered patients on the waiting list for kidneys in particular. The red line here shows you the number of kidney transplant operations that are done throughout the years. Now, notice what's happened. The blue line is going up faster than the red line. There are now more people waiting for kidneys than ever before. At least part of the reason is because we're all living longer. And kidney failure is something that often happens to people who are older. And so as we live longer and longer lives, so more and more of us are affected by kidney failure. And yet the number of people willing to donate their kidneys has not increased significantly. And so you see this gap. Here's another way of rendering the very same information, right? Here's the kidney transplant operations as a percent of patients on the waiting list. And notice that that percentage is declining, and it continues to decline to this day, right? So there are more and more people on the waiting list and not enough kidneys to go around. This is pretty bad. It turns out that kidneys and liver are the overwhelming majority of the problem for people waiting on organs, right? There are people waiting on lungs, on hearts, and on other organs, but notice that kidneys make up the overwhelming majority of what people need and want, right? The overwhelming majority. Well, it turns out that every 18 minutes, somebody dies because they couldn't find a kidney. So in the time that we have together, about 5 or 6 people on average will have died because they couldn't get a kidney from that waiting list. Here's a chart of people who are either too sick to have a transplant, so they've been on dialysis so long that they couldn't get a kidney transplant even if one was made available to them, and the number of people who just die waiting futilely for a kidney, right? And those numbers have increased. I have it up until 2007. The numbers are higher today, right? People do donate kidneys, and the United States is actually pretty charitable on this score, right? So here you have the United States, and you can compare it to other countries. And this is the organ donor rate per million population in 2010. Right? So the U.S. has quite a lot of people who are willing to donate a kidney, and yet despite this significant charitable rate, there's this problem, a problem that's growing. People are dying for want of kidneys, people are waiting for kidney transplants, and there's just not enough people willing to donate kidneys. Right? Now, we've tried all sorts of things. In the 1980s, we had Michael Jordan be the face of the donate a kidney to someone in need, right? That goal. Michael Jordan, very popular guy, even more popular in the 80s than now. What impact did this advertising campaign have? Nothing. Right? People get desperate. And so they're left with doing things like this, for example. People take out billboards and they say, look, please, I need a kidney. Here's my phone number. Call it, and let's see if we're a match. And maybe you can donate your kidney to me. Please help save my husband's life. I need a living kidney donor. go to bobbyskidney.com or call that number. This is my face. Please, I'm begging you. Help save my husband's life. Here's Steph. Steph needs a kidney. Her kidneys have failed. She's a young mother, and she needs a live kidney donor. Hey, is it you? You know, people get so desperate, they do crazier things still. They walk around with sandwich boards like this in their cities. And the sandwich board reads, as you can clearly see, I need a kidney donor. And they'll walk around in like downtown New Orleans with this sandwich board, just like begging, please, donate a kidney to me, please, I'm begging you, right? Now we can fix this problem. People don't have to take out billboards. They don't have to walk around with, I need a kidney. They don't need to beg for people to donate a kidney to them. We can fix this problem. We can fix it almost overnight. We can save thousands of lives. We have to institute a market in kidneys. If we allowed a market in kidneys, we would fix the problem. Nobody disagrees with that claim. No economist has disagreed with that claim. None of the people who are on the other side from me of this debate disputes the fact that a market in kidneys would save thousands of lives. They think there are other reasons that outweigh the potential to save all of those lives, but nobody disputes the claim that a market in kidneys would in fact save lives. And there's a very good reason why we know that it would work. And that reason is because there is one country in the world that allows a market in kidneys. One and only one country in the world. Can you guess the country? Very good. Iran. Iran is the only country in the world that permits a market in kidneys. And guess what? Nobody dies for want of a kidney in Iran. There is no waiting list for people waiting for a kidney. Now, don't get the wrong idea. There is a waiting list. There's a waiting list of people wanting to sell their kidneys in Iran, right? But there is no waiting list for people who need a kidney, right? That waiting list does not exist. Now, during Q&A, we can talk about the case of Iran more if you'd like, because it's not an amazing system. And in fact, there are many problems with Iran's market in kidneys, lots of significant problems. I have a strong suspicion that the reason why there are so many problems in Iran is because of their poor political and legal institutions, right? If we had a market in kidneys in the US or in Canada or in Australia, our superior political and legal institutions, in my mind, would overcome any problems that might exist in Iran. But we can talk about Iran more if you'd like.
Remember the story about the guy who put his kidney on eBay? It went up to $5 million in like 3 days.
Yeah, that kind of thing happens.
I mean, there are millionaires
Not
out
frequently,
there.
but like it happens. And there are lots of people who are willing to pay a lot for a kidney. I mean, if I'm faced with potential death, and my FICO score is pretty good, I just checked it this morning, right? I would take out a sizable loan to try to, if you wanted to like sell your kidney to me, but you're like, I'm taking nothing less than $250K, which I would expect if you're taking economics. Are you in philosophy or economics? Yeah. In philosophy, great. I'll offer you $100,000. I'm sure you would jump on that. All right.
Lots of first kidney? No.
So why don't we have a market in kidneys in the U.S.? Here's Nobel Prize-winning economist Alvin Roth, and he tells us that we have often found that distaste for certain kinds of transactions is a real constraint, every bit as real as the constraints imposed by technology or by the requirements of incentives and efficiency, right? People are morally repulsed at the thought of a market in kidneys. And that repugnance is sufficiently strong to keep us from instituting something that definitively will save a lot of lives. So put differently, in words that economists might prefer, we are willing to pay the price of a certain number of deaths every single year in order to avoid feeling morally repulsed, right? So what kind of arguments do people produce to defend the idea that we should not have a market in kidneys? This is an argument that Jay and I took from Elizabeth Anderson. We call it the mere commodity objection. And it goes like this. Whoops, not that. Okay. Premise 1, kidneys are not a mere commodity. Premise 2, to buy or sell a kidney necessarily means that you regard kidneys as a mere commodity. That's like what it means when you go to the market and you buy something like a human kidney. You must think of that kidney as a mere commodity, else you wouldn't be buying and selling it, right? It is wrong, she tells us, to regard kidneys as a mere commodity, right? I mean, your body is a temple. The attitude that you have towards your own body is morally important and significant, right? You should think of your body and treat your body in certain ways, not in other ways. But people who buy and sell kidneys, they think of their body like, I don't know, like widgets, like commodities, right? Like oil, gas, that chair, that table. It's just, yeah, I've got a kidney. It's like my car out there. I'll sell my car if I have to. I'll sell my kidney if I have to. So it's wrong, she tells us, to buy or sell kidneys because it's wrong to have that attitude towards your own kidneys, right? And Michael Sandle tells us that markets don't only allocate goods. They don't just move things from one place to another with money facilitating the exchange, but they also express certain attitudes towards the goods or the services that are being exchanged, right? When we buy and sell something, we don't just express our preference, we also express a certain attitude towards the things that we are buying and selling. That's like the nature of the argument, right? Here, during the National Organ Transplant Act debate, the Senate Labor and Human Resources Committee that was struck to discuss the potential legislation that would make it illegal to buy and sell human organs in the United States, they said the following: "It is the sense of the Senate Labor and Human Resources Committee that individuals or organizations should not profit by the sale of human organs for transplantation. The committee believes that human body parts should not be viewed as commodities." So the Senate Labor and Human Resources Committee also thinks that there's like a necessary connection between having a market in something and thinking of the things bought and sold as mere commodities, right? Now, what does it mean to think of something as a commodity? There are 3 components to thinking of something as a commodity. The first one is denial of subjectivity. The commodified thing either lacks consciousness or is something whose experience and feelings need not be taken into account. When you think of something as a commodity, you deny its subjectivity, and that's perfectly okay when it comes to things like tables. And it's perfectly okay when it comes to things like bottles of water. Partly the reason is because they don't in fact have a subjectivity. They don't have a perspective on the world. They don't have any insides from which they might have a point of view about the rest of the world, right? So that's the first element. That's Martha Nussbaum, by the way, in the corner. The second element is instrumentality. The commodified thing has only or mainly or primarily instrumental value. So the value that it has is value in use, right? Rather than any kind of intrinsic or inherent value. But people aren't like that, right? People have intrinsic or inherent value. The value that I place on you can't just be in the tuition dollars that you pay, which in some abstract way made their ways into my pocket, actually into Chris's pocket, right? So I can't think of you as a mere tool in that way. I have to respect you as an end in yourself as well. And then finally, the third element is fungibility. The commodified thing is replaceable with money or other objects. In fact, possessing this fungible object is the very same thing as possessing money. So those are the 3 elements of thinking of something as a mere commodity. Here's Elizabeth Anderson. She says, to say that something is properly regarded as a commodity is to claim that the norms of the market are appropriate for regulating its production, exchange, and enjoyment. To the extent that moral principles or ethical ideals preclude the application of market norms to a good, we may say that that good is not a proper commodity. So you can summarize Elizabeth Anderson's view in the following sort of way. The norms of the market are market norms. They structure and they shape our attitudes. Markets cause, on her view, us to be more self-interested, to engage in more crass calculation, to regard the stuff that is for sale as of merely instrumental value for the satisfaction of our non-moral desires. When I think of like a clever way of capturing her whole argument, I think that you might phrase it as the claim that markets cause homo economicus, right? Markets cause homo economicus. I think that's the thesis here. So let me ask you this question. How many of you have one of these? It doesn't have to be an adorable black lab. How many of you have a dog of any description whatsoever? Hands up nice and high. How many of you have one of these? It doesn't have to be an adorable kitty. It can be an older, less adorable version of this cute thing. I have two of these things. They are not as adorable. How many of you have either a cat or a dog?
I've got a horse.
Where are all the people with pets? You have a horse?
I have horses.
Or a horse? How many of you? All right, well, a horse, I've never heard. How many of you have a pet octopus? Oh, no pet snake? We are like, you have a hamster? I'm going to leave hamsters to one side just for purposes. Okay, fine, hamsters too. How many of you have a hamster? And how many of you have this attitude towards your cats, dogs, your horse, or your hamster? How many of you think of your, frankly, pets as members of your family? Do you have a cat or dog? I thought you...
I have that attitude toward animals.
All animals? Okay. How many of you have this attitude towards your cats or dogs, hamster or horse?
Not to mine, I don't have it.
But to others? What your horse, what's the name of your horse?
Sundance.
A Sundance? Okay, Sundance.
Sundance and Tabasco, I got two.
You don't have just one horse, you have two horses? Do you like ride into school every day?
I tried.
You tried, but they won't let
Wasn't
you?
friendly, no.
Administration is not good on riding the horse. There we go, yeah, Gangnam Style, right? Yeah, okay. Sundance and Tabasco, yeah? How much did you pay for Sundance?
$450. He was a rescue horse.
450?
Yes.
And what about Tabasco?
He was 1,000.
$1,000. Have you ever taken Tabasco or Sundance to the vet?
Yes, many times.
Many times. So let's take Sundance. You paid $450 for Sundance. Then Sundance got broken. Okay. And then how much did you spend at the vet? More or less than $450?
More.
Oh, more. Do you have any specific numbers?
Throughout the year, because of his first year being like it was, I would say approximately $1,200.
$1,200. So you paid $450 for a working model,
Somewhat.
and then it was broke.
He was broke when I got it.
Oh, he was broke when you got
He was
it.
a rescue horse. He was in very bad shape.
But then you spent more than what you spent on the horse. Okay, why didn't you just get a new Sundance
Okay, because this particular...
that wasn't broken in the ways that would cause you to pay $1,200?
Because when I found him, he was skin and bones and stuck in the mud and couldn't lift his feet out of it.
Okay, well,
And he
all
was
the
also-
humor is out
Yeah.
for this story. That sounds terrifying. All right, let's focus on Tabasco for a second. It sounds like that horse is going to have a spicier story.
Point you take. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, dum-dum.
Sundance was a former racehorse. He was
Oh.
actually worth quite a bit of money. He's worth far more than that.
Now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you're selling Sundance?
No, I'm going to keep him.
Oh, you're gonna
if I
keep
wanted to,
Sundance?
He's about a 25 grand horse now.
25 grand horse now, but you're not selling?
I like him.
Oh, okay.
I'll sell Tabasco. You want him?
No, we'll hold. You can keep Tabasco. I have no way of I don't know what highway I can take to get Tabasco back to Washington, D.C. Also, where do I store a horse in Washington, D.C.?
Generally in a barn, but I don't know if y'all have that.
I don't know if I have the money to get a barn in Washington, D.C. This home here on M Street, the Ukrainian embassy, let's just convert it into a barn for my Tabasco. Who else has a cat or dog? What do you have?
I have a dog,
What's the name of your dog?
Slugger.
Slugger. Why didn't you name your dog something proper like Richard? Why does nobody name their dog something like good, like Richard, or like Henry or something?
That was the name that he.
That was his name?
That was
Okay.
the name they gave him at the shelter, so I just kept it.
Slugger. All right. How much did you pay for Slugger?
$90 for the adoption fee.
$90 was the adoption fee for Slugger. Have you ever taken Slugger to the vet?
No, I actually just got it like 2
Oh, you just got him. That's fantastic. Anybody else? What do you have?
Dog,
What's the name of your dog?
Apache.
Apache. Okay. And how much did you pay for Apache?
I think like $50 at a shelter.
Oh, $50. That's pretty cheap. And have you ever taken Apache to the vet?
Yeah, I'm just about to.
Oh, you're about to? What
I've taken them before.
What does Apache need?
Heartworms, rubella.
How much is all of that?
It's gonna cost like $200.
$200? How much is it to put Apache down?
How much? I just put a dog down. How much is a 22 bullet? I don't know.
A 22 bullet? So I have no idea. I don't know. About $20. So,
I think it's I don't know. It's probably like $1,000.
so you're willing to spend $1,000 to fix your broken dog? When you could, what's that?
You said to put down.
Yeah,
No. I mean, I'll spend whatever I can, which is probably like $200
$200.
every year.
I have 2 cats, which, because this is on tape, I love equally. Okay, 2 cats. One is Winston, the other one is Howard. Howard is a female cat, just FYI. Howard is a proper name for an animal, just FYI, like Richard and Henry and Howard. We just took them to the vet, and I have a bill for $1,930 to have 4 teeth extractions for Winston and 1 tooth extraction for Howard. Almost $2,000 minus $70 that we just spent on Howard and on Winston, right? When I asked you, like, why you kept your horse or your dog, well, you haven't had a problem yet, right? Rather than...
It cost me a lot of money already in destroying stuff.
Oh, well, there you go, right? When I ask you those questions, it's funny, precisely because that is not the way that you think of your horse, your dog, or your cat. None of us in this room, maybe a few exceptions, think of our cats, dogs, horses, or hamsters as mere commodities. We don't think of them as mere commodities despite the fact that we spent money to acquire them, right? We buy pets, and yet we think of them as members of the family, right? And this is because, in fact, there are at least 2 different senses of commodity. One sense is anything that is bought and sold on a market, right? And that includes cats, dogs, and all sorts of other things. It could include our kidneys, right? And then there's the commodification attitude, which is the attitude we take where we deny subjectivity, attach merely instrumental value, and regard as wholly fungible the thing that we purchase with money, right? But none of us in this room think of our pets as being fungible with money. Some of us could make money on our pets, and yet we don't, although we could. Maybe some point in the future you will. Nevertheless, you still don't think of your horses as mere commodities. You do think of them as genuine members of your family.
Some of them.
Some of them.
I'll sell you Tabasco.
But this, yeah, as you've said. But now I don't want Tabasco. Even if I could get Tabasco back to Washington, D.C., obviously there's something wrong with Tabasco, if that's your attitude. I don't want your horse.
At a time.
Oh, that's the problem?
That's the attitude.
Okay. Here's the bottom line. There just isn't a necessary connection between buying and selling anything and any mode of valuation whatsoever. There is no necessary connection between those 2 things, right? And that includes the commodification attitude. The presumed necessary link between putting something on a market and having this attitude is not a necessary connection at all, and it's demonstrated by cats and dogs. I can give you other examples too, like many people purchase art and yet have the right kind of attitude towards art. But you might wonder, okay, fine, that's all well and good as far as our private attitudes go. But what about the signal that you're sending to others? It's possible that when I go to the pet store and I purchase a cat, the thoughts in my head are consistent with thinking of the cat as a sort of creature that warrants a certain kind of respect, right? But what about the signal that I'm sending to all of the people who see me in the store purchasing the cat or dog, right? There's often a difference between what we mean to say and what we express, right? There's often, well, this is clear if you're in a relationship, sometimes you say something meaning one thing, but it's interpreted differently. So there's a difference between those two, and that introduces this second objection. We call it the wrong signal objection, and it goes like this. Buying and selling certain objects tends to express certain morally deplorable attitudes. Like when I go to the pet store, I'm expressing publicly the commodification attitude, even if I don't in fact have the commodification attitude. I'm signaling that publicly. This expression occurs independently of any attitudes that the person may happen to have. If so, then commodifying certain objects is wrong, like kidneys. Let me tell you a story. It's about King Darius of the Persian Empire. Right? King Darius was very interested in the funeral practices of his people, and he said, "My people respect their fathers." And we all want to signal that respect publicly at a funeral. But the Greeks do different things from the Galatians, and so I will bring them both here and I will ask them about their funeral practices. And so he brought forth the Greeks and he said, "Greeks, you respect your fathers." And the Greeks nodded to King Darius. "Well, of course, King Darius, we all respect our fathers, don't you? We all do. Tell me," he says, "how do you demonstrate that respect at a funeral?" And the Greeks sort of scratched their heads. They were confused and they said, "Well, King Darius, I mean, duh. Why, we burn our fathers on a funeral pyre. Doesn't everybody? I mean, to burn your father on a funeral pyre, why, that signals respect." Now, let's go through a thought experiment for just a second. Picture fire here, all right? You can close your eyes if you have to, but like picture fire here. And now, and I'm sorry if this is upsetting, right? But now picture your deceased father, and he's dead. And now put your father on top of the fire, and what is the first thing that comes to your mind?
Public cremation.
Maybe that's the second thing that comes in. What's the first thing that you think of immediately when you think of fire and father?
Burning father?
Respect! Respect! It's bleedingly obvious. Fire, person, respect. Ta-da! After all, a funeral pyre releases their souls into the afterlife, say the Greeks, and King Darius was pleased, and he said, "Very good," but he wanted to press, and he said, "Tell me, Greeks, would you ever eat your dead fathers?" And the Greeks, like you in this room, were outraged, and they said, "King Darius, that idea is morally disgusting to us. Do you know what else we eat? Why, we eat celery. We eat broccoli. Some of us, but not all of us, eat peas. If we were to eat our dead fathers, why, that would be to treat them as mere food. It would mean disrespecting them, and furthermore, it would corrupt the very meaning of funerals." And King Darius was pleased, and he brought forward the Galatians, and he said, "Galatians, you respect your fathers?" And the Galatians, "Oh, why, of course, King Darius, we respect our fathers. Everyone does. Tell me, how do you demonstrate that respect at a funeral?" And the Galatians, like the Greeks before them, sort of scratched their heads and they said, "Well, King Darius, duh. Why, we eat the hearts of our dead fathers. Don't you? Doesn't everybody? I mean, after all, to eat them is to keep them with you for all times, right? When you eat the heart of your father, why, that keeps his soul with you forever. And hopefully your son will eat your heart too. And then that way you and your father and your grandfather and your great-grandfather continue to live on forever." Let me just picture it for a second. Use your imagination once more. Here is the heart. still beating, of your dead father. And now here's you.
Even if he's dead.
Well, you ever kill a fish? It still moves after the head is gone. If you cut off the head of a chicken, it still runs around. It's just muscle spasm, okay? And now you're eating the heart of your dead father.
Why are you looking at me?
You're the one with the horses, so I assume. What is the first thing that pops into your mind?
Respect.
Respect! That's right, King Darius. Respect. But King Darius pressed on. He said, tell me, Galatians, would you ever burn your fathers on a funeral pyre? And the Galatians, like the Greeks before them, were outraged. They said, King Darius, that idea is morally repugnant to us. Do you know what else we burn? We burn our garbage. If we were to burn our dead fathers, why, that would be to treat them as mere garbage. It would be to disrespect our fathers, and furthermore, it would corrupt the meaning of funerals altogether, right? Now, this little tale has an upshot, and it's this. The meaning of market transactions, just like the meaning of funerals, they are not found in the nature of the universe, right? We don't discover that fire and person together signals respect by doing science on the universe. No, we construct cultural attachments between items or symbols and their meaning, right? Market transactions, just like funeral practices, they are not written into the fabric of the universe. It's just a convention, a mere contingent fact. Now, before you go, hold on just 1 second. One last thing. I know you probably have to rush. But let me give you this illustration, because we can do it here in this room, and I'll ask you to participate, and then you can go. What does this mean? Warning ahead of time. I curse and I do things like that. Just deal with it. Deal with it. Okay, what does this mean? And then you can go.
Are you serious?
I'm fucking serious. What does this mean? Here's your chance in front of your professor. Give it to him.
Fuck you.
What does it mean?
Fuck you.
Oh, there's something in my ear. What did you say? Speak up.
Fuck you.
It means fuck you. You can go. You're free to go now. Unless you want to hear the rest of this, because then you won't be offended. This means fuck you. Does it have to mean fuck you? Yeah. Does it have to mean fuck you? It doesn't have to mean fuck you. We could all look at our hands, right? We could look at our hands. And it's like, I want to express disrespect, right? I want to signal it to others, okay? Can I do this? This seems the opposite of what I want to do, right? How about this? No, that's everything is A-okay. This clearly, universally, in all possible worlds, must mean fuck you. Of course it doesn't. We could, you and I, decide to institute a private meaning agreement, right? So for the purposes of this talk, until the end of my talk today, we can agree to make this mean,
I love you.
that's a bit strong, we just met. How about I respect you? Agreed? We can institute a private meaning convention between us, where if you see me do this, it doesn't mean fuck you. It means instead, I respect you. And so the appropriate response, if I were to do this, is? That's one. What's another one? Right back. It's possible. So we can give each other the finger for the rest of the day. Okay. Here's the wrong currency objection. So you might think, well, that's true of markets. Markets have contingent meaning, no worries. It can mean something else. But what about money, right? Turns out that there are certain contexts where the use of money seems wrong, right? Money communicates distance and estrangement. There are some relationships, especially between romantic partners, but also within friendships, where it would be morally wrong to communicate that kind of impersonal distance, right? If so, then using money within certain kinds of relationships is wrong. Therefore, using money within certain kinds of relationships, one more, is wrong. And here's a little illustration of that. Here's a cartoon that captures our thinking about this. Here's a couple, they come to a party and they say, we didn't have time to pick up a bottle of wine, but this is what we would have spent. Now picture doing that at a real party, and probably that's more than merely uncouth. Well, maybe it depends, right?
College kids would be okay with that.
I think so. But now if you're in a committed relationship, right? Think about the following situation where you're like, sweetheart, honey, doll, do you mind doing the dishes? Right? And she or he is like, no, I don't feel like it. Would an Abe Lincoln change your mind? No? How about Tommy J? Psh, 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 right? And maybe that would be uncomfortable, and maybe that would work in your relationship, but now substitute sex for doing the dishes. And probably it would cause nothing but offense. Am I right? Oh, no, okay, good. Well, yeah. Since I read a lot of economics, and so I try to institute some of these economic norms in my relationship, but I don't recommend it. It doesn't always work out as you plan, right? Well, here's the marina of Madagascar, right? They have a custom, and the custom goes as follows. Every time a man has sex with a woman in this culture, it is expected that the man put a gift of money under the pillow. And that's true in marriage as well, right? It is an expected part of the relationship that if you're going to have sex with someone, you have to leave a gift of money under her pillow, right? And in fact, it would be disrespectful to fail to leave money under that pillow. The money doesn't signal impersonal distance. In fact, it signals something very different within this culture. It means that you are close rather than distant. Now picture at a funeral, right? Imagine hiring someone to cry and wail at the funeral of someone you care very much about, right? This is Ding Mao. She is the most famous paid funeral mourner in China. Her job is to go to funerals and to cry and wail as loud as she can during the funeral for people she has never met. And she rolls around on the floor and she says, "Oh, Kevin, Tabasco, oh, Tabasco. I wish you had lived longer, Tabasco." And she cries and makes a really big show of it. And you can sort of understand why a service like this would be desirable in at least some contexts. In at least some cultures, it's not okay for you to cry publicly, right? It's not okay for you to show too many emotions. But if you hire somebody like Ding Mao, and there she is, and she's rolling around, and she's bawling, she's making an enormous scene, it suddenly becomes okay for you to cry just a little bit, right? You can cry just a little bit if there's one person making a huge scene during the funeral, right? Well, it turns out that people pay for funeral mourners all over the place, in China, in Romania, even in the United Kingdom. I checked out this website last night. As I was preparing for this talk, I found this website. It's called rentamourner.co.uk. It's active right now. You can check it out if you want to. And you can rent people to go to the wake or to a funeral. If there's not going to be enough people at that funeral, you can hire someone to come and stand in at the funeral, right? It'll run you about $35 an hour, or 35 pounds an hour, right? Now, if we did something like this in our culture here in the US, people would probably frown and they wouldn't be happy about it. But in these other cultures, the fact that you hired someone might signal just the opposite of disrespect. It might be deeply respectful for you to hire someone to come to your father's or your mother's or somebody else's funeral, right? And we can, in fact, run an experiment, right? So picture two worlds, right? This is our world, and this is twin Earth, right? So here's Earth, and here's twin Earth. Now, it turns out that on our Earth, we have the following customs and practices. Here, we write our own wedding speeches. You can purchase wedding speeches online, by the way, right? And we buy birthday presents, and we buy flowers as gifts, and we buy dinner on Valentine's Day, and all of those things we think are perfectly morally appropriate and okay, right? But now picture twin Earth, where everything is topsy-turvy. On twin Earth, they pay for wedding speeches. They make birthday presents rather than purchase them. They grow flowers as gifts rather than buy them. And they make dinner on Valentine's Day rather than buy dinner on Valentine's Day. Question: which Earth, our Earth or twin Earth, is the morally superior Earth? Correct. Neither, right? We have our own Michael Sandel, and Michael Sandel, he says some people buy wedding speeches. In his book, he says this. Can you believe it? Don't they see how this is just obviously disrespectful? But you can picture twin Michael Sandel on twin Earth saying the following. Some people write their own wedding speeches. Can you believe it? Don't they see how that is obviously disrespectful? This is one of the, or if not the most important day of your friend's life. Shouldn't you care enough about them to hire a professional to write the speech? The bottom line for that last piece is that when it comes to symbolism, it is captured up and entirely explained by mere contingent convention. Right? Now, I'm not suggesting that all ethics are contingent or relative. That's not my suggestion. But some things are. When it comes to the meaning of these kinds of symbols, right? When it comes to the meaning of markets and to the meaning of money, that's culturally contingent. And it's relative. There are other facts about the Earth and about us that make it the case that there are some things that would be true about ethics on both our Earth and on twin Earth. But markets and money are not it. Thank you very much. That's it.